The Azure Flame Sage's Return. Chapter 1. The Fall of a Genius. The Grand Mage Tower stood tall against the evening sky. At 32 years old, I, Valen Ashford, was known throughout the Five Kingdoms as the Azure Flame Sage, a prodigy who reached the fifth circle of magic at age 25, the youngest archmage in 3 centuries, or at least I was. The council chamber doors burst open. 7 archmages entered, their robes flowing with elemental energy. At their center walked Magnus Corvell, my former friend, now head of the Mage Council. Valen Ashford, Magnus's voice echoed through the chamber. You stand accused of forbidden research into time magic. The evidence is overwhelming. I stared at the documents they presented. Forged research notes, fabricated testimony, all lies, but perfectly crafted ones. This is absurd, I said calmly. I've never touched time magic. You know the laws as well as I do, Magnus. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The council has voted. You are stripped of your title as Archmage. Your magical license is revoked. You will be exiled to the Borderlands, where your power will be sealed for 10 years. 10 years. In the world of mages, that was a death sentence. Without access to magic for a decade, my cultivation would collapse. Everything I'd built would crumble. The other archmages avoided my eyes. These people I'd considered colleagues, friends even. All of them had voted against me. I understood then. This was a political purge. Magnus wanted my position, my research, my seat on the council. Take him, Magnus ordered. 2 guards approached, magical binding chains in their hands. As they locked the chains around my wrists, I felt my connection to the magical realm begin to fade. The azure flames that had been my signature for years flickered and died. I had been too focused on research, too naive about politics, and now I would pay the price. But as they led me away from everything I'd worked for, I made a silent promise. If I ever got the chance, I would return. I would revenge, but to reclaim what was mine and expose the truth. Chapter 2. The Oracle's Gift. 3 months in the Borderlands. The sealed chains around my wrists prevented me from gathering mana. My magical cultivation, once at the 5th circle, was deteriorating rapidly. At this rate, I'd be completely powerless within the year. I survived by doing manual labor in a small border town. The other workers, all ordinary people, treated me with suspicion. They could sense I was different even without my magic. One evening, as I returned to my small rented room, an old woman stood waiting by my door. Her eyes glowed with an ethereal silver light. Valen Ashford, the fallen Azure Flame Sage, she said softly. I tensed. Who are you? I am Meridiana, keeper of the temporal shrine. The threads of fate have brought me to you. She gestured to my room. May we speak inside? Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat down and placed a glowing crystal orb on the table. I have watched the flow of time, she began. 7 years from now, Magnus Corvell will complete a ritual known as the Arcane Dominion. It will bind every mage in the 5 kingdoms to his will, creating an empire of enslaved magic users. Millions will suffer. I leaned forward. How do you know this? Because I am a temporal mage, one of the last. What Magnus doesn't know is that his ritual will tear the fabric of reality itself. The world will fall into chaos. She pushed the crystal toward me. Touch this. See the future that awaits. I hesitated, then placed my hand on the crystal. Visions flooded my mind. Cities burning with uncontrolled magical energy. Mages with dead eyes, their wills enslaved. Magnus sitting on a throne of pure mana, drunk with power. The magical realm itself beginning to collapse. When the visions ended, I gasped. This can't be real. One possible future, the most likely one. Meridiana stood. I can give you one chance to change it. I will send your consciousness back 7 years, to the day before your exile. You'll relive these years with all your current knowledge intact. Why me? I asked. Why not do this yourself? She smiled sadly. Because I am dying. This is my final act. The temporal shrine has chosen you, Valen Ashford. You have the knowledge, the talent, and the determination. Use them wisely. Before I could respond, she touched my forehead. Energy unlike anything I'd felt surged through me. 7 years, Valen. Change the future. Save the world. Everything dissolved into light.
Chapter 3. Awakening to the Past.
I jolted awake in a familiar room. Sunlight streamed through tall windows. My heart pounded as I looked around. This was my study in the Grand Mage Tower. The calendar on my desk showed a date from 7 years ago. I stood and rushed to the mirror. My reflection showed me at 25 years old, not 32. My hands trembled as I summoned my magic. Azure flames danced across my fingertips, bright and strong. I was back. 7 years in the past, with all my memories intact. A knock at my door. Archmage Valen, the council meeting begins in 1 hour. I recognize that voice. My assistant, Elena, a loyal woman of 40 years who had tried to speak up for me during my trial. In my previous timeline, Magnus had her transferred to a remote research station as punishment. Thank you, Elena, I called back. I'll be ready. I sat down, mind racing. 7 years to prepare. 7 years to expose Magnus's conspiracy. 7 years to become strong enough to stop the Arcane Dominion ritual. But I couldn't just accuse Magnus now. I had no proof, and I was still too weak. Even as a 5th Circle mage, I wasn't strong enough to face Magnus and his allies alone. I needed to become stronger, much stronger. In my previous life, I'd been content with reaching the 5th Circle at 25, thinking I had all the time in the world. I'd focused on research instead of cultivation. That had been my mistake. This time, I would push myself to the limits. The 6th Circle, the 7th.
Maybe even the legendary 8th Circle that only 3 mages in history had achieved.
But more importantly, I needed allies. People I could trust. People who would believe me when the time came. I opened my journal and began to plan. Every major event I could remember from the next 7 years. Every magical breakthrough. Every political shift. Every person who would be important to the coming conflict. Knowledge was power, and I had 7 years of it. Chapter 4. The Path to Power. Every morning before dawn, I practiced monocirculation techniques, the basics that most mages ignored once they reached the 5th Circle. But I knew these foundations would be crucial for reaching the 6th Circle and beyond. Archmage Theron, a 50-year-old elemental magic expert, noticed my dedication during research sessions. "Valen, you're training intensely lately," he observed. "Is everything all right?" I realized I've been complacent, Theron. Reaching the 5th Circle young doesn't mean I should stop improving. He nodded. Wise. Many young archmages forget this. True masters know the 5th Circle is just another step. Theron was a good man. In my previous timeline, he'd questioned my exile, but lacked the political power to stop it. This time, I would keep him as an ally. Theron, hypothetically, what's most important for reaching the 6th Circle? His eyes lit up. Ambitious. Most would say rare resources or forbidden techniques. But in my experience, the key is understanding how different magical elements connect. Not just mastering one, but seeing how they all relate. This matched what I'd learned in my previous life, but only after years of study. Having this confirmation now saved me valuable time. I threw myself into studying elemental connections, fire and water, earth and wind, light and shadow. Each pair opposed yet complemented each other. I also began gathering information. Every council meeting, I listened for signs of Magnus's conspiracy. Every new mage who joined the tower, I evaluated as potential ally or enemy. And I documented everything in coded journals, hidden in places only I knew. Chapter 5. The Information Network. 2 years into my second timeline, my cultivation had advanced beyond my previous life at this point. I could feel the barrier to the 6th Circle growing thinner. But cultivation alone wouldn't stop Magnus. I needed intelligence. I reconnected with Cassandra Blackwood, a 35-year-old woman who ran the largest magical components shop in the capital. But that was her cover. She operated one of the 5 Kingdoms' most extensive information networks. "Archmage Valen," she greeted me. "It's been a while. What can I do for you?" I waited until other customers left. "I need information, Cassandra, and I know you're the person who can provide it." Her expression stayed neutral. "I sell magical components." "I'm not sure what you mean." "I mean the intelligence network you've run for a decade, the one that's exposed 3 corrupt officials this year." She studied me carefully. "What makes you think I'd admit to such a thing?" "Because in 2 years, Magnus Corvell will consolidate power. He'll target independent operators like you. I'm offering protection for your network. And what do you get? Information on Magnus's activities, his allies, his research." I leaned forward. "I believe he's working on something dangerous." "The Arcane Dominion ritual."
Her eyes widened.
You know about that? I've heard whispers, strange component purchases, meetings between Magnus and unconventional researchers. She poured tea. I've been watching him too. If you're serious about stopping him, we can work together. From that day forward, Cassandra became my eyes and ears. Chapter 6. Breakthrough to the Sixth Circle. 3 years after my return, I achieved it.
The sixth circle of magic.
During meditation in my cultivation chamber, I'd been working on understanding opposing elements. Fire and water weren't just opposites. They were two sides of the same coin, energy transforming between states. When I truly understood this, something clicked. My mana core expanded, the energy becoming denser, more refined. Azure flames erupted around me, now streaked with silver. The Sixth Circle. At 28 in this timeline, I was the youngest Sixth Circle mage in history. In my previous life, I never reached this level. I kept it secret. Only Elena and Theron knew. If Magnus learns this, he'll see you as a threat, Theron warned. He'll move sooner. Exactly. Let him think I'm still Fifth Circle. When the time comes, this is our advantage. Meanwhile, Cassandra's network fed me information. Magnus had recruited 12 archmages,
Promising them power in his new order.
We also discovered something crucial. The Arcane Dominion ritual required the triple moon convergence, an astronomical alignment that occurred once every 50 years. It would happen in exactly 4 years. That's our deadline, I told my allies in a secret meeting. Besides Theron and Cassandra, I'd brought in 3 trusted people. Marcus Rivera, a 40-year-old combat mage. In my previous timeline, he'd resisted Magnus and died. This time, I found him early. Sarah Chen, a 33-year-old research mage with access to the tower's restricted archives. And David Stone, a retired 50-year-old archmage who still commanded respect. 4 years to stop this, Marcus said. What's our plan? Gather evidence. Document every illegal purchase. Track every conspirator. Build a case the council can't ignore. And if that doesn't work? Sarah asked. I met her eyes.
Then we make sure we're strong enough to stop it by force.
Chapter 7. The Ancient Technique. At 29, I discovered something that would change everything. In the tower's deepest archives, I found a reference to the Azure Phoenix rebirth, a lost cultivation method that let a mage temporarily push beyond their current circle. The cost was severe. After using it, the mage would be weakened for months. But during activation, they could wield power 2 circles above their level. For me at 6th Circle, this meant temporary 8th Circle power, odd by potential. The level of legendary tower founders. The technique was incomplete, but I remembered something from my previous timeline. A traveling merchant who'd claimed to have an ancient manuscript. Everyone dismissed him as a fraud. But what if he wasn't? I found him in the same city, same tavern, same day. A weathered 60-year-old man sitting alone. Excuse me, I heard you have information about ancient cultivation techniques? His eyes sharpened. Most think I'm a liar. Why should you be different? Because I'm willing to listen. And pay if your information is genuine. He pulled out a worn journal. My grandfather's. He studied lost magical techniques. This one, the Azure Phoenix Rebirth, was his life's work. He only found part of the method. I opened it carefully. The technique matched the archives, but this had the missing sections. The complete method. How much? 5,000 gold pieces. A fortune. But I paid without hesitation. The key to stopping Magnus. Chapter 8. The evidence mounts. 6 months before the triple moon convergence, we had everything. Cassandra documented every illegal purchase. Sarah found correspondence between Magnus and dark mages. Marcus had witness testimony. It's time, I told our group. We present this to the full council. Force them to act. David shook his head. Magnus has too much influence. He'll dismiss it as forged. Not if we have council support, Theron argued. 6 archmages will stand with us publicly. 6 out of 20, Marcus calculated. Not enough. It is with public opinion, Cassandra said. I'll leak this to every major city simultaneously. Magnus can't silence everyone. I nodded. Both approaches. Present the evidence formally. If they refuse to act, we go public. Either way, this ends. The plan was set. In 3 days, we'd move. That night, Elena burst into my study, pale. Valen, we have a problem. One of our allies was compromised. Magnus knows we're planning something. My blood ran cold. Who? Unknown. But Magnus is accelerating. He'll attempt a modified ritual in 2 weeks during the partial moon alignment. It won't be as powerful,
But it'll affect every mage in the capital.
2 weeks. We'd lost our advantage. Then we move tomorrow, I decided. No more waiting. We expose him now, before he completes any version of the ritual. Chapter 9. The Council's Judgment. The emergency council meeting assembled all 20 archmages in the Grand Chamber. Magnus sat at the head, confident and composed. He didn't know what was coming. Fellow archmages, I stood. I have evidence of a conspiracy threatening the entire magical community. Magnus's expression didn't change. Bold words, Valen. I hope you can back them up. I placed documents on the table. One by one, I laid out everything. Illegal component purchases, secret meetings, research into the arcane dominion ritual. Ridiculous, Magnus said smoothly. Obviously forged to discredit me. Valen has always been jealous of my position. Jealous? I kept calm. I'm presenting evidence of a crime that would enslave every mage in this city. Theron stood. I've verified these documents. They're authentic. I call for immediate investigation. 4 other archmages stood with him. Then David rose from the visitors' gallery. I may be retired, the old mage said, but I still have eyes. The evidence is clear. Magnus Corvell has been planning the Arcane Dominion ritual. Magnus's composure cracked. You have no proof. The ritual isn't mentioned in those documents, but it is in this one. Sarah stepped forward with a letter. Your correspondence with Archmage Darius, discussing the final binding during the convergence. We know what that means. The room erupted. Magnus's allies shouted denials, but more council members demanded answers. Enough! The senior arbiter slammed her staff. This requires formal investigation. Magnus Corvell, you are suspended pending inquiry. Your magical privileges are restricted. Magnus stood, pale with rage. You're making a mistake. I was trying to protect us, to make mages strong enough that we'd never be threatened. By enslaving your fellow mages? I asked quietly. That's not protection. That's tyranny. He looked at me, really looked, and something clicked. You knew. You've known for months, maybe years. How? I didn't answer. Guards placed binding chains on Magnus and his co-conspirators. 12 archmages led away to await trial. The ritual was stopped. The conspiracy exposed. Chapter 9. The Alliance forms. With 1 year remaining, I finally revealed myself to my carefully gathered allies. In Raven's underground meeting hall, I assembled everyone who would be crucial to my plans. Sir Gareth, who had finally been convinced by repeated anonymous warnings that a conspiracy existed. Lady Celeste, whose father's life I'd saved, and who now worked secretly to audit the kingdom's finances. Marcus the Battle Mage, a former council member who'd been expelled for questioning Matthias's research, and a dozen others, each with their own reasons to oppose the coming coup. Thank you all for coming, I began, standing before them in simple clothes, my hood drawn low. You've each been fighting parts of this conspiracy alone. Tonight, I unite you. Tonight, we become the shield that will protect this kingdom. Pretty words, Marcus grumbled. But who are you to unite us? Raven vouches for you, but we don't even know your face. I pulled back my hood, letting them see me clearly for the first time. Several gasped. Sir Gareth's eyes widened in recognition. My name is Aldrich Solaris, second prince of this kingdom. 3 years ago, I was cast out of the palace by traitors who feared what I might become. Now I've returned, and I bring proof of a conspiracy that threatens not just the throne, but every mage in this kingdom. I laid out the evidence. The financial records Celeste's father had gathered. The witness statements Raven's spies had collected. The forbidden ritual texts I'd copied. And finally, I demonstrated my lightning magic, letting the blue-white energy dance across my palms. In 1 year's time, Crown Prince Matthias and the corrupted Mage Council will attempt to perform the Crown of Dominion ritual. If they succeed, every magic user in this kingdom will become their slave. They'll use the king's blood to power it, which means they'll kill my father. They'll kill anyone who stands in their way. Then we go to the king now, Sir Gareth urged. Show him this evidence. Let him mobilize the loyal forces. I shook my head. The Mage Council has infiltrated too deeply. Half the palace guard answers to them. Many of the nobles are in Matthias's debt. If we move too soon, they'll simply accelerate their plans. We need to be smarter. So what do you propose?
Lady Celeste asked. We spend the next year preparing. We quietly remove key conspirators from their positions. We secure magical artifacts that could disrupt the ritual. We train, we plan, and when the night of the celestial alignment comes, we strike with overwhelming force. I looked at each of them in turn. I won't lie to you, some of us may not survive, but if we do nothing, everyone dies. At least this way, we fight. One by one, they pledged their loyalty. Not to the throne, not to duty,
But to me, to the prince who had returned from nowhere, wielding lightning and speaking of impossible knowledge. My army was small, but it was loyal. And loyalty, I'd learned, was worth more than 1,000 unwilling soldiers. Chapter 10, The Final Night. The year passed in a blur of preparation. We secured the Scepter of Nullification, an ancient artifact that could temporarily suppress magic in a wide area. Marcus trained me in advanced combat techniques specifically designed to fight multiple mages at once. Raven's network identified and quietly eliminated the worst of Matthias's agents.
but we couldn't stop the celestial alignment.
The night arrived with clear skies, the stars arranging themselves in the pattern required for the ritual. I stood on the palace walls, watching my cousin's forces gather in the grand courtyard. The Mage Council surrounded him, their staffs glowing with prepared spells, and at the center, bound by magic, were my parents. My father's face was bloodied but defiant. My mother wept silently. They'd been captured just hours ago, during a betrayal so carefully orchestrated that even I hadn't foreseen it. 3 of the nobles I'd thought were loyal had been compromised. Aldrich,
Raven's voice crackled through the communication stone I carried.
we're in position. All teams report ready. I took a deep breath, feeling the lightning surge through my veins. This was it. The moment I'd been building toward for 6 years. The moment I would finally change fate. Execute, I commanded. Chaos erupted across the palace grounds. Marcus and his loyal mages attacked the ritual circle from the east. Sir Gareth led a squad of hand-picked knights from the west. Celeste activated the Scepter of Nullification, temporarily cutting off the Mage Council from their power reserves. And I leaped from the wall, lightning wrapping around me like armor, diving straight toward Matthias. His eyes widened in shock as I landed between him and my parents. You! How are you alive? I saw you die in the flames! You saw one future, I snarled, lightning crackling from my fingertips. I lived it, died in it, and came back to burn it to ash. This time, cousin, I am the flame, and you will be the one consumed. Our battle shook the palace foundations. Matthias was powerful, backed by forbidden magic and the partial support of the corrupted council. But I had something he didn't. Absolute conviction. I'd already lost everything once. I had nothing left to fear. Lightning met dark fire.
Earth walls crumbled under devastating force.
The courtyard became a crater as we unleashed magic that should have been impossible for any single mage to wield. But I was winning. Slowly, inexorably, I pushed him back. Years of desperate training, the power of lightning, and the fury of a man who'd watched his family burn were too much even for him. You can't defeat destiny! Matthias screamed, blood running from his mouth. I was meant to rule! Destiny, I laughed bitterly, is what we make it, and I've already rewritten mine. The final strike of lightning burned away his magical defenses and left him unconscious at my feet. Around us, my allies had subdued or scattered the corrupted council members. The ritual circle lay broken, its components scattered. I'd won. I'd finally, impossibly, won. Epilogue. A new dawn. 3 months after Magnus's arrest, the trials concluded. He and his conspirators were found guilty of conspiracy to commit magical enslavement. Their punishment was severe, but fair. Permanent magical binding. They would live the rest of their lives as ordinary people, unable to access the power they'd tried to abuse. I was offered Magnus's position as head of the Mage Council. I declined. I appreciate the honor, I told the assembled archmages, but I think it's time for a new kind of leadership. Someone who wasn't involved in the conspiracy, but also someone who represents a different approach to magical governance. I nominated Theron, and the council agreed. For myself, I accepted a different role. I became the Director of Magical Ethics, a new position created to prevent future abuses. My job was to investigate any suspicious magical research and ensure the Council remained accountable to the magical community.
It was perfect for me. I could use my knowledge of the future to prevent other disasters before they happened, without needing the political power that came with being head of the council. Elena became my deputy, and together we reformed the tower's research practices. Sarah took over the archives, opening them up to more mages while keeping the truly dangerous materials secure. Marcus established a new training program for defensive magic, teaching mages how to protect themselves and others. And Cassandra? She continued running her information network, but now with official sanction as a consultant to the council. Her intelligence prevented 3 more conspiracies in the first year alone. As for me, I continued my cultivation, the same age I was when I'd been exiled in my previous life. But now I stood at the peak of magical achievement. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about Meridiana and her gift. The temporal shrine had given me a second chance, and I'd used it to save countless lives. But more than that, I'd learned something important. Power wasn't about how strong you were individually. It was about what you chose to do with that strength. Magnus had sought power to control others, and in the end, that made all the difference. I never told anyone about the time travel, about the future I'd prevented. It seemed unnecessary. What mattered wasn't where I'd come from, but what I'd built. The boy who'd been exiled in disgrace had become the man who saved the magical world, and in doing so, I'd found something I never had in my previous life. Not just power, but purpose. The end.